and happy Saturday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, March something, 21st. I don't know. Uh, it sounds good to me. I think it's the 22nd, Val. Val Atkinson is here. I've been halfway around the world, Val. Last time we talked, I was in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and I made it back to lovely Raleigh, North Carolina. And we talked a little bit about being in Dar es Salaam the last time we were on, so I won't belabor that. I got a whole bunch of video and stuff that I'm working on, and I'm going to make some special pieces on that. But I'm back home, Val. And when I was in Dar es Salaam and in Zanzibar and in Mbezi, Tanzania, uh, every time people found out I was American, they were like, "Hey, how'd y'all elect Donald Trump again?" And I'm talking about common man on the street kind of folk, working on ships and tour guides and all that. They were just really, really could not understand how that happened. So we know how it happened here. I mean, people were, lulled into thinking that Donald Trump somehow being a businessman, whatever, was better than Kamala. At least that's what people said. So let me stop talking because I know that one of the things that you've been concerned about, like me, is this guy named Elon Musk, unelected, really unappointed. There's been no Senate confirmation. A department that created out of whole cloth, the Doge department, supposedly run by some woman who didn't even know she had a job. So Elon Musk wouldn't have to go up to Congress and testify. Val, we ain't even been through the first 100 days. What has Elon Musk done this week that we should
This
be
week,
concerned about?
this week, I'm glad you put that preference on there because he does something all the time. We could talk about the Pentagon, we could talk about Social Security, we can go in and talk about Department of Education, the student loans attached to that, all of these things, but it all boils down and is distilled in the fact that Elon Musk wants to be the world's first trillionaire. He's already the richest man in the world. So there's no argument about that. He wants to be the world's first trillionaire. He's almost halfway there now as we speak. So all of these things are geared toward that. And some may ask, well, what is he going to do? How is closing all these places and firing all these people going to make him more money? Well, here's the deal. In order to expand the tax cuts that the rich and very rich got the last time, you're going to have to make sure you don't raise the deficit in doing all of that. His goal is to make some strategic employee changes so that money will be available to help pay down the cost of tax breaks for rich folks. So he wants to do that. And while he's doing that, if he can somehow take a look at how the government is being run to help him with his billions of dollars of contracts that he has right now with the federal government, that'll help also. In other words, he got about $58 billion in the last biennium budget as a sort of a gift to help him with his businesses. And oh, by the way, he didn't pay any taxes on the money he earned. And plus we gave him $58 billion to help him with his businesses, but that's not enough. He wants more, he wants it all. And so that's his motivation to do this. So now he's going into the Pentagon and saying, let me see your plans for how we would react and what we would do if we got in a war with China. The unlearned may say, so what? Yeah, well, so what? He can use that information while he's doing business with China and people in China to say, you may not be around if this happens or that happens. But if I know what is going on and you're a part of me with this plan over here, it may protect you over there. It's all kind of ways he can use that information.
Well, Val, I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of the Tesla operations are in China. I've shown on this program before for the people who see the video portion of this of Musk being in China, meeting with Chinese officials when he opens this big new Chinese facility. And so a lot of Teslas aren't even made in the US anymore because he got mad at California, moved to Texas. But when he moved to Texas, they were running into so many problems. He opened a facility in China. So he has deep connections in China, Val. And speaking of Tesla, I do want to talk about some protests that are going on. Let's take a look at this video and then we'll talk about it.
Tonight, authorities investigating what they're calling a targeted attack on a Tesla repair center in Las Vegas. This dramatic video showing multiple cars in flames. According to authorities, the suspected arson occurred early this morning. When police arrived, they found 5 vehicles set on fire or damaged, and the word resist spray painted on the front of the business.
We believe the suspect approached the business wearing all black clothing, and he used what appeared to be Molotov cocktails and a firearm to conduct his attack.
Just hours before in Kansas City, 2 Tesla Cybertrucks set ablaze at a dealership there. Tonight, the FBI stepping in to help local police investigate both incidents.
To those who might think that something like this is justifiable or potentially even admirable, we want to let you know it's a federal crime. We will come after you.
While authorities say the identities of the suspects and the motivation behind the attacks are still unknown, it comes amid at least 16 reports of vandalism to Tesla vehicles and dealerships across the country as people nationwide protest Tesla CEO Elon Musk and his prominent role in the Trump administration.
So clearly, Val, some people are like, F you, Elon Musk. Maybe people who even bought Teslas in the past or, at the beginning, Tesla was the darling of the left because it was going to save the environment because they're electric cars, right? But now Musk finds himself very unpopular. Despite the fact that he's still the richest person in the world, the stock price for Tesla has been collapsing for the most part, right? He's lost a lot of value from that company itself. But to your point, is he has his hands in the Pentagon. He has his hands in all these other agencies. He needs to make sure that these tax cuts are offset some. But Val, I went to the Doge website. I don't know if you've been to it, but it has a dashboard supposedly of the savings. Can you talk about that? Because when I started looking at the numbers, most of those savings are pretty paltry and won't get to what you were just talking about. So explain that to me, how they get to those numbers when the amount of savings, and for the ones who are on audio, I did air quotes. How do you get to that? It
started because these guys, Tesla owner Musk and his young boys, the 20 and 21-year-olds, they don't understand government. That's the biggest error they came in with. They don't understand how it works or why. They came in with a false impression that there were a lot of people being paid to do nothing. There are a lot of people just walking around getting money. There are people getting Social Security checks, 150 years old. They really believe this kind of stuff. They thought that the average person was somebody working at a factory, making $37,000 a year and being happy about it because they could claim the title of being an American. So they were happy with that. And they thought that these people working for the federal government in Washington and Maryland and other places were a bunch of moochers. So if they could get rid of that, they are hurting the woke. They are hurting the left. They are hurting those people that are against them. That was the deal. They knew, they had no idea how much it's going to be. They overestimated the amount of saving. These people who are going in and telling other people, we don't need you anymore. Your services are not required. You don't even know what they do. You have no idea what the savings is going to be if it's going to be any savings or not. And Trump is smiling at this, Ed, and simply because it's causing chaos and it's causing misery to all of those people who've been against him since he failed to get an NFL team back in the early 2012s and 13s. And he's trying to make us pay for it right now.
Well, you know, he didn't deserve an NFL team because he didn't have the money like other NFL team owners had. Okay, he's a paper tiger. Nothing he claimed to own, he owned, and every business he had failed. So, you know, NFL owners would have been hard pressed to actually award him a team. And if he runs it like he's running the country, that club would have been bankrupt by now and moved to another city. Based on his track record, I want to remind you, you're listening to or looking at The Deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. It's Saturday, March 22nd, 2025. We're talking about, we started out talking about Elon Musk. Val, to your point, Stephen A. Smith was on Jake Tapper earlier. Let's take a look at that and then we'll talk about it.
Take, a lot of us did. Watch your take on the Pentagon's initial removal of Jackie Robinson's history from its website. For those who did not hear it, explain why it was so important for you to call out the Trump administration on this.
Well, I just think it was egregious on their part, and I think it's along the lines of what they've been trying to do. I think they're trying to gloss over and scrape history. They're trying to move forward, and it's almost as if they want our nation to forget a history that involves racist behavior on a part of the white power structure that has existed in the United States of America. It's almost as if to say, look at what we're doing, and this is the problem. We keep looking back, and we need to forget all of that. They want folks to forget. Well, you don't get to make that decision, and you don't get to erase history. History in all its forms is history in and of itself. It's historic. It's something that needs to be acknowledged. It's something that needs to be remembered and recalled whenever necessary. And for an administration to be making a concerted effort to do that is incredibly alarming in and of itself. But when you think about who they're capitulating to, who they're trying to appease along the way, it just gives the impression that there's tens of millions of Americans who completely and unequivocally support such a thing. And obviously, I'm not one of them. So I spoke out about it, and I stand by it.
So Val, you pointed this to me, and I took a look at it, and so the whole discussion started out about Jackie Robinson. There had been information on the DOD website, you know, talking about Jackie Robinson, his military service, whatever, blah blah blah, and it got scrubbed because it was DEI related, supposedly, right? Because I think DEI now equals Negro. So,
Yes.
So when they talked about the fact that he had served, but he had also been court-martialed. Now he was acquitted in the court-martial because he refused to buckle down and go to the back of the bus, so to speak, with the Army, and so they even mentioned that in the article. But he was still, you know, Jackie Robinson, first, you know, black player in the Major League Baseball. So anyway, Stephen A. Smith then brings up the point about meeting and talking with Donald Trump before he became president. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what the conversation was about, and what do you think, you know, Stephen A. Smith is getting at that he's now appearing on all these shows?
The fact that he was absolutely devastated that he did not get an NFL team when he was trying to do so. And that motivated and prompted him to run for president of the United States. He made that decision in 2015. He said, I'm going to pay everybody back that denied me something that I should have rightfully had. Everybody. I'm going to become president of the United States, and I'll show them what they have done wrong to me and with me, and I'll pay them back. Those were Stephen A. Smith's words, and I paraphrased just a little bit there. But that was the motivation, according to Stephen A. Smith, for Donald Trump getting into politics in the first place. And nobody talks about that, but I think we need to dig into it further to find out what's going on. And He did a good job. He went in and took over the Republican Party. He was smart enough to know what made those guys tick. And the only thing he had to say and do, he could go in there with the birther situation on Obama, talking about the Central Park Five and it tugging at the racist strings of the base of the Republican Party. And if he could get that, then he could control everything within that party because he would control the base. That's how smart he was. He did that.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say Donald Trump and smart in the same sentence, but anyway, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we got to talk about the Department of Education and student loans next. So we'll be right back after this message.
Firearms are the #1 cause of death among kids, but we know that healthcare workers can make a huge difference. This is why prevention is absolutely critical. Let's agree to agree that we all have a role to play in ending this crisis.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Eric Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We started off today talking about our buddy Elon Musk and Tesla and some of Tesla's problems, but also the fact that Elon Musk has an inordinate amount of influence over things and is causing a lot of havoc. A lot of people have been losing their jobs, and we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on some of the change in policy. And one of the change in policies that is concerning me very much right now, Val, is Donald Trump trying to close down the Department of Education. I think it's, again, one of those misperceptions that, like you talked about, where they thought that people just came and sat at their desk. But at the Department of Education, they did not create curriculum and that kind of thing, right? They tried to make sure that children that are disabled got services, that children that had food insecurity got lunch and breakfast, to make sure that if there were civil rights complaints, that there was a place for you to take those and so on and so forth, right? And those are the things that they're going directly after right off the bat. And then on the higher education level, they've threatened places like Duke University with investigations for supposedly, discriminating against white men. And then the topper, earlier today, I wake up and I see that they're moving student loans under the Small Business Administration, an agency where they just laid off a ton of people. So I have concerns about how those loans are going to be managed. And we know there was a push by the Biden administration to do some loan forgiveness. You can kiss that goodbye. So Val, let's start with the Department of Education. You used to be an educator and you were at the higher level in college, and students depend on student aid to go to school. What is the net effect of what Donald Trump's trying to do? What do you think his master plan is on education in the end?
Well, what it's going to end up being is less Pell Grants. I mean, less people will go to college that are having financial troubles, that come from families that don't have the resources to go to college. That's going to be the net effect of it. But there's another subsidiary effect as well. As we know, during the Biden administration, student loans were deferred and deferred and deferred again. People with student loans, active student loans, haven't made any payments in 1, 2, 3 years. And that is going to start up again. And the payments that they will be paying are going to be substantially higher than they were when they stopped paying. It could be 2, 3, 4 times as much. That's what I worry about, because now you have working people with families that see a 200, 300, 400% increase on a student loan that they couldn't afford in the first place. And where's that money going? If the Small Business Administration gets it, it's going right back to the business guys that had it before Biden did some things to get it in the Department of Education, so that some of the borrowers could get better sweetheart deals. as Trump calls them, okay? Get better interest rates, get deferments, get forbearances, and all of those kinds of things. So they're going to be a double whammy here. It's going to be a whammy on people trying to get Pell Grants to go to school that's never been in school before. And it's going to be a big hit on people who've already made loans and are trying to pay them back under the Department of Education guidelines, which will be no more. And the Small Business Administration, along with private banks and private financial institutions, will make up these new rules as to how current loan holders will have to repay that money. And it's going to be devastating because they want more money.
Yeah,
you to say, Ed, as you and I used to say, rich folks have figured out that poor folks have too much money, so they come get it.
well, here's the thing. If you look at statistics, and we hadn't talked about this, but you look at statistics about who has been going to college and ending up with at least advanced degrees, and in case terminal degrees, there has been a large increase in Black women and they're outpacing white men by a long way, percentage wise, right?
Yeah.
And then when you look at overall, white men were at the bottom. Asian people were going to college, Hispanic people going to college, and white men were not, and still aren't. Whether or not there was money available or not, because there's a couple of things that remain true in America. White men don't have to have any kind of credentials for anything. Right. So the real affirmative action has always been that you show up as a white dude and you can be in charge. And you look at some of the richest men in the world, Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, and
independent college.
No, and some of them barely went.
Right.
They just matriculated for the freshman year, and that was it. They were done. And so they tried to make it seem as though if you didn't have these, MBAs and all that other stuff, you're nobody. They've successfully tricked everybody into spending all this money to go to school, and now those degrees, I won't say are worthless, but they're worth less because you have to pay so much to try to pay back these loans. And now that Pell Grants will probably be cut back and they won't have minority present scholarships and stuff like that, then enrollment's going to be down, I think. So here's the magic question that we didn't talk about is, what do you think the net effect on HBCUs is going to be?
The net effect on HBCUs is going to be tremendous, Ed. And I applaud you for bringing that up. Because what's going to happen here is going to be, like they say in the Army, shit flows downhill.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to happen because of decisions by schools like Harvard to cut back on affirmative action enrollments and DEI, as they call it, and those kinds of things. A lot of those people that would have gone to Harvard and Columbia and Yale and places like that are going to now go to your HBCUs. So now HBCUs are going to become more competitive. It won't be a remedial training program like it used to be 50, 60, 70 years ago. It'll be a place that it is growing into now, a place of excellence. So now people who maybe didn't get 1350 on their SAT, maybe didn't even get 1200 on the SAT, they're going to have problems because some of those people with 1400 on the SAT will not be able to get into MIT. Okay. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to A&T. They're going to go to Morehouse, right? They're going to go to Spelman. They're going to go to all of these schools that have been on the top of the list, and Howard, I should say, for many, many decades in the African-American community. So we're going to see a rise in scoring and let me put this right, I don't want to say the wrong thing. You're going to see a rise in SAT averages and GPA scores and that kind of thing at HBCU. Because some of those people are going to be coming from PWI schools with higher grades and that kind of thing. But the net effect, what about those people that got into places like Val Atkinson did in 1961? What about those people? Those people are not going to go to college at all. They're not going to go to college at all. There's no factory in town. The military is looking at you sideways and don't know if you're DEI or woke when you're coming in. So I don't know. It doesn't look bright. For some of our people on the lower rungs of the financial ladder, you may have a problem, especially if your scores, your SAT scores, your standard testing scores are not at a very, very high level.
Yeah. It may be that the only people at PWIs, only people of color at PWIs might be athletes. You know, I mean, because that's the only way that you could justify letting them in, right?
Yeah.
And of course, there was a lot of pressure on that back in the 80s when I went to college, first went in the early 80s. You know, the reality is black folks had just started going to PWIs in the early 80s.
Couldn't go when I started.
No, again, if you been paying attention, March Madness is going on, and there was a time when Charlie Scott was the only Negro on the Tar Heels, and Duke didn't have any Negroes, and that was into the 70s. So I try to remind people all the time that this is not a long time ago for any of this stuff. You and I were alive, Val, very much alive, when black folks started showing up at PWIs in the first place. And so it's only been a matter of 50 years in a lot of cases, like in Alabama's, in Duke's, in Clemson's, where Negroes started going to school. And I say Negroes, and I'm not trying to be funny, because that's what we were then, right? And when we started showing up, so that gives me a lot of heartburn. But Val, let me switch gears real quick, because all of this, getting rid of the Department of Education and moving stuff over to SBA, like you said, there's a backstory behind that. It's another attempt to try to shift money to rich people. Well, here's another attempt on Social Security. People have been paying into Social Security for years, right? So you supposedly have this money. They changed the rules this week. One of the rule changes is that in some cases, you got to appear before somebody to prove your citizenship. But at the same time, Val, they started closing offices. Now, chances are, if you're one of those people who may be eligible for Social Security, it's either because you have a disability or you're elderly like me and you. and in those cases, transportation becomes a problem in the first place, even if the law office is local. But what if there's no office at all, and somebody in, I don't know, Ahoskie, North Carolina has to get in a car and get to Elizabeth City? If there's still an office there, they may have to go to Norfolk, right, to go to an office. What is that about? I think I have an answer, but you tell me, why would you close offices but then make the rule that you gotta go to an office?
Well, they're not trying to do this logically. Let's get that down straight first. They don't care about that. It doesn't have to make sense to them. It has to make money for them, not make sense. So I don't even try to go into that to figure out the mentality and the mindset of these crazy folks. They're not trying to make things better. Efficiency doesn't mean that with these guys. It's just a part of their name, but it's not a part of their DNA. So they don't care about that. I would like to go back to one thing before we continue on this, Ed. When we were talking about education, we failed to mention how it's going to work now that they want to shift everything back to the states. Shifting things back to the states mean that poor states like Alabama and Mississippi, in particular Louisiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, These guys won't be able to fund their state educational budget on the money they have. There are some states that pay in far more to the federal government than they receive back in grants, and vice versa. There are states that receive far more in federal grants than they pay taxes into the government. An example is California and New York are two states that are funding the education program for people in Mississippi and Alabama. And Mississippi and Alabama vote Republican. They voted Democrat way back in the 40s and the 30s, but now they vote Republican every time. They're the one that need this money. So where they want to get it from? They're going to get it from California and New York that always votes Democrat lately. So you're talking about a transfer of funds. So if you want to really do this right, tell them that don't go worry about block grants, as we used to call them. Just tell them to let the states keep their own money and you do your own, fund your own education. Don't get any money from the federal government. That they are getting money from other states that you hate to run your program. Nobody's talking about that, but Ed Clark and Val Atkinson was the first one to bring it up, and we need to talk about it at some point.
And you're absolutely correct, Val. And I think when the rubber hits the road, there's going to be some people in the House, particularly those folks from those red states, who are going to see the lights come on when they go, oh shit, how are we going to pay for that?
Yeah, we don't have the money. I got vouchers in my hand, but nobody would let me into the school.
No.
I want vouchers so I wouldn't have to send my kids across town to go to school with those rappers and hip hoppers, okay? So now I got this voucher to go to this nice little private school over here, but they won't let me in because they said that is half of the money for the tuition in this private school.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to come up with the other $5,500 myself. I ain't got that money. Well, send your kid to the public school with the rappers and the hip hoppers. That's what this was all about in the first place.
And it'll be underfunded, and they won't have the programs, and then they won't be competitive when it comes time to try to get into university or whatever.
Right.
And so
the cycle keeps going around
and round. You know what? I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take another break. When we come back, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about Donald Trump administration defying federal judges on deportation. We want to talk about the Republican town halls and how raucous they are. And then we want to talk about a story that North Carolinians know about, which is they had oral arguments in the Court of Appeals on the Supreme Court race. Val, I listened to those oral arguments and I want to talk about it. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Here's the deal. We gotta set ourselves up. See, retirement is the long game. We can't play about our future or our finances. And no matter what hand we're dealt, we still work our way to the win. Make moves and make them early. Set up goals. Don't worry about a setback. Just save up, stack up to reach them. Let's put ourselves in the right position. Now is the time to play with purpose. Let's play to win, so our future follows suit. Free game to greater things. This is Pretirement.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It's March 22nd, 2025. We've been trying to make sense of what's going on in D.C. with the Trump administration actually, let me rephrase that. With the Musk administration and with the court jester for the king, Elon Musk, is Donald Trump, because he goes on TV, Val, and says funny things. And he lets Elon Musk stand over him and talk, which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. The whole scene when Musk was in the Oval Office with his son, and his son is picking boogers out of his nose and all kind of other stuff and blurting out inadvertently, that Donald Trump wasn't the real president, stuff like that. You can't make this shit up. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I never thought in our lifetime we would see this. But Val, on the way back in, I showed some video of a town hall meeting with Chuck Grassley. Everybody knows I spent a lot of time in Iowa, and I used to be on the plane with Chuck Grassley a lot on the weekends because Chuck Grassley used to fly home from D.C. every Friday if there was nothing going on a Saturday, and then on Monday mornings he would fly back to D.C. And a number of times I was on the plane, either flying out of D.C. to Iowa or vice versa with him on the plane when I used to work for a government agency. And that was damn near 20 years ago. Chuck Grassley is old as shit. But he got up there, Val, and was trying to defend all this stuff that we've been talking about. And so one of the directives that went out to Republicans is not to do town hall meetings. Or if you do them, only let certain people in, right? Check people's, status. And I even saw a couple of news reports where people were complaining that they were turned away because they were registered as independent and they only wanted Republicans in the room. But it still got out of hand for some of these town hall meetings. Talk to me, Val, about why these Republican backbenchers is it just afraid of being primary, or have they actually drank the Kool-Aid and are full MAGA? My suspicion is most of them aren't full MAGA like they pretend to be, but it's so fraught that they won't be empowered that they're willing to sell their soul and pretend to be full MAGA and say some stupid shit. And even people like Chuck Grassley, who know better, are doing the same thing, right? They're going along and doing this bullshit at their town halls. What do you make of these town hall meetings?
Comes down to one word, Ed, is threats. No sensible, sane representative in the United States political system will put his particular office ahead of the entire country. He wouldn't do it. There's no way. He'd go home first. He'd resign. But it started first with some of these representatives and senators understanding that it's just not them that's being primary, but their whole staff's got to go home. People that they've developed great relationships with on a personal level. So they lose their whole staff loses their job, families break up, people lose their homes and cars and that kind of thing. So that was the reason that they kind of toed the line a few years ago. Now it's gotten even worse. Family members of representatives and senators are getting threats. People are being told that not only you and your family members, but everybody you know is subject to attack if you don't toe the line for the MAGA movement. So these guys are afraid not only for their lives, because some of them are, like you say, Grassley type people. They only got a few years to go anyway. That's not it. They are afraid that they'll make a decision that is going to impact the life of their family members and other loved ones that they have in their lives. And they don't want to do that. That's where Musk and his money and his friends with money have control over our political system. They have not only bought, in some cases of people who could be bought, they are now in the business of threatening the rest of them that if you don't toe the line, bad things can happen to you and your family. It's out of whack. It's what I said, what we said, Ed, on this show several months ago, that American democracy is gone. It is gone. Stop talking about trying to save democracy. You need to be talking about how to get democracy back. It's gone. Anytime representatives can be threatened, the families and loved ones of representatives can be threatened to make them toe the line to a political ideology, you don't have a democracy.
Yeah, we lost that, Val. I mean, Tom Tillis here in North Carolina, the senator, for a senior senator from North Carolina, he's been, viciously attacked and threatened, but it makes me wonder, Val, when or if something happens, then what would be the repercussions? Would the average, Republican voter then come to their senses? Or like I said,
Well, nobody's going to come to their senses, Ed, because it depends upon where they get their news from.
Mhm.
By the time they get word of what's happening, it would have been sanitized and scrubbed 8 ways.
Fun.
And they won't even say, well, they said, well, the guy just committed suicide. So that's,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is how they roll. I mean, but it's just so weird to me. I don't remember people ever having a Jimmy Carter, flag outside in front of their house, or a Barack Obama, or even Bill Clinton. The adulation that some people and the sycophant behavior that some people do on behalf of Trump just seems really weird to me. But I think if we've deconstructed it before, Val, it doesn't have anything to do about Donald Trump. It has to do about fear of losing white control. I mentioned it the last time when I was on being in Tanzania. The first person I met there was a guy getting off work off of a ship, because there's these ships that go back and forth between Zanzibar and Tanzania. And he was just a working class guy. And he goes, hey, how did Donald Trump win? He says, we got a woman president. You guys can't even elect a woman president. What's up with that? And this is a guy halfway around the world who doesn't think about America in general, but it was a good question. That people now, I saw some polls where the Democratic Party is like down at 20% approval rating. Donald Trump is underwater in approval. The Republicans are underwater in approval. But the reason why everything is in such a bad shape is that white people put us here. They voted for Donald Trump because of their fear of losing white control. I don't know how else to say it, because when we were talking about Stephen A. Smith in the other segment, the story was actually about them scrubbing Jackie Ribinson off of the Department of Defense website. And they've scrubbed anything related to black people from Arlington National Cemetery and all kind of other places, because they don't want to hurt white people's feelings and make them feel bad about what they've done to other people. And I guess I'll leave it there, but it's just really disheartening that we kept saying that democracy was on the ballot and democracy lost. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And despite anybody saying that now people had fucked around and found out, it's not funny anymore, because real lives are in the balance. And Val, so this next story, let's take a look at a clip of these guys being sent to this Supermax prison in El Salvador.
We begin with a follow-up to our top story last night. The Trump administration deporting a Venezuelan asylum seeker who has no criminal record and who his family says is not a gang member. It is believed he is now in a notoriously dangerous prison in El Salvador.
After our story aired last night, we heard from an attorney who has tracked at least 44 Venezuelan migrants with no criminal records in the United States or their home country. She says they, too, were among the 238 Venezuelans deported to El Salvador aboard 3 planes and now in that prison.
CBS News has obtained the names of all the men deported. The White House insists they were all criminals, members of a Venezuelan gang.
But that is in dispute. Nancy Cordes is at the White House with more on this story. Nancy?
John, good evening. And this is the internal government list of all the men who were placed on those controversial deportation flights to the Salvadoran prison. Trump officials refused to release the list, saying the men are dangerous terrorists. But lawyers for the men say they are being denied due process and risk being locked up for life.
So, Val, Donald Trump likes to be a despot, right? He likes people that are strong. And so in El Salvador, they treat prisoners bad. You can't wear any clothes. You got to strip down to your underwear. You can't look up. They make you bend down, you know. And so the judge said, hey, wait a minute, Donald Trump. You need to prove that, one, that you've had some due process, some hearing to determine that this person actually should be deported. One. Two, that he fits the criteria of being deported. And three, you're sending him to a foreign jail, which we don't do typically. Val, how is this deportation plan to remove these people, despite what the judge says? It's just another evidence to me that Donald Trump doesn't give a shit. But what is the likely outcome of all this? I bet you somebody's going to get killed, and it's going to be somebody who shouldn't be there. But you tell me, what do you think is going to happen with this?
Well, I think it's going to expose the fact that America really has never had a functional democracy that could protect itself. We have always depended upon the goodwill of people in high places to do the right thing in order for this thing called democracy to work. And what Trump is doing right now is saying, he's thumbing his nose. He's giving the middle finger to the judiciary, saying, hey, you guys don't have any power. You tell me that this is a ruling that you have sent down by decree? Enforce it. What do you have to enforce it? You can't do it. Tell me not to do something, I do it anyway. What are you going to do about it? I mean, we had a guy in front of the judge just last week, Ed, that told the judge that he was being disrespectful. The judge was being disrespectful to what he was trying to do. It's off the rail. And Trump is saying, I'm going to show you guys it's off the rail and that democracy doesn't work and all of this co-equal branches of government and checks and balances stuff is a bunch of crap. I'm going to show you because you can't do a damn thing about what I want to do. I'm saying I'm going to do this. You take it to court and I say, so? The judge says X, Y, Z, and I say, so? Make me do what you want me to do. Pass all the damn laws, Congress, you want to. Judges, pass all of the edicts that you want to. And I'll say, all y'all go to hell.
Well, that is what they've said. Go to hell. You know, damn you. So here's the last story I want to talk about, Val. We always seem to end up back in North Carolina because a lot of the shenanigans they try out here in North Carolina, they kept pushing voter ID until they finally got it. But it was one of the places where that idea had legs, and then they kept going and going, and they kept losing the court, and they figured out a way to get it in front of the right judges to finally get voter ID here. So a spillover is the Supreme Court race here in North Carolina. There's a race that's still unsettled. And there's a Democratic judge that's sitting on the court. And we remember a time, Val, when those were nonpartisan races. You couldn't say that you were a Republican or a Democrat, right?
Right.
But the Republicans knew that the way they could gain more seats is they make them partisan. They allow them to raise a bunch of money, and they turn it into just another race. And so this one judge, two judges are running for the Supreme Court seat, and one of them lost, the Republican. And so it goes up to a higher court. It comes back down. They keep losing in the North Carolina court. And finally, it's in the Court of Appeals. And I listened to the oral arguments, Val. I won't play any of them. I can put a link or something in there for people who want to listen to it. And what struck me is the arrogance of the Republican attorneys. That it's almost like you judges are stupid. You're going to listen to this bullshit and buy what we're saying. They essentially said that you could change the rules, that these people should have had their IDs checked even though they were doing absentee voting. Now, here's the thing. Some of these people are overseas in the military, or spouses of military, or children of military, right? Or missionaries or whatever. How in the hell are you going to appear before the Board of Elections with an ID, Val,
Don't try to logically explain it, Ed. Logic ain't gonna do nothing but get you confused here. Sense and rationality gets you confused when you're dealing with Republicans because they don't deal with that. They don't deal in that realm. They deal in the realm of what I want. Whether it's logical, rational, legal, doesn't matter. And as a matter of fact, the more irrational it is, illogical, unreasonable it is, even illegal, the more they think their base will like it. So they just push it forward. And they leave it up to the Democrats and the woke crowd to argue about whether or not that was the right thing to do and whether or not it is going to be good for America or not. While they keep going and saying, I don't give a shit if it's good for America or not, it's good for me. So let's keep on going that way.
Yeah.
And the Democrats have got to stop walking down that road of appealing to the logic of their people, of American people, to try to get them to change their ways and change their votes. I don't think it's going to happen, Ed. And unfortunately, it may take some catastrophic event to take place before we take power. Take, I said, the operant word in that sentence is take, not ask, but take power back from the MAGA crowd.
Yeah.
And stop asking them to give it to us. Stop trying to show them that their thinking is wrong and they should think like us. Stop trying to put them in a position that they can't explain what they're doing and have to agree with us. Go take it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they got it from us. They took it.
Well, you know, it goes to how they've been able to successfully take over state legislatures, right?
Yeah.
So in a place like North Carolina, where you know that more likely than not, Democrats would win the state legislature if it was the districts were drawn fairly, because
Right.
there's a Democratic governor, there's a Democratic attorney general, there's a Democrat. Same thing in Pennsylvania, same thing in Wisconsin. All those battleground states, they were effective in going in there and making it odious for people to vote in midterm elections, right? And also convincing people that it wasn't important to vote for state legislators. And Val, we've been doing this long enough where we've warned people over and over again that you have to go to those off-year elections. You have to vote in state legislative races, or else you gerrymander your way out of power and can't get back in, and then me and you will be dead.
Yep.
And 30% of the population will be ruling people. So, you know, again, having traveled all over the world, and you too, Val, you know that despots don't need everybody to be in control. In South Africa, the white people were outnumbered by a long way. But they had a couple things on their side. They had guns for one, right? And then they could convince some black folks in South Africa that you needed to guard these other black folks.
Yeah.
Because they mean you no good. And if you serve us, we'll take care of you. There were a lot of black police officers in South Africa that were beating people upside the head.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no other way to do it. And we have the same thing in America here, Val. We have Tim Scotts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Byron Donalds.
Scott Turner.
Yeah. That Negroes who would beat other Negroes upside the head for Donald Trump and for Elon Musk, knowing they don't mean us any good at all. And so that's how we're going to end this today, Val. You're going to tell me something I need to know, something I need to be looking for in the next week, and then we'll get out of here. So what do we need to be looking forward to?
What we need to be looking forward to in North Carolina in particular is to follow up on, just keep track of, there's nothing you can do about it, but just keep track of for your own edification, what the courts are saying about this Supreme Court race and what they're going to do about those ballots. The other thing is, I would ask people to really follow diligently the moves of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Know what they're doing so that you can be prepared to make a move or do whatever you need to do to counteract what they're doing to protect yourself and your family. Because it's serious. This is war, and it just hadn't gotten bloody yet. Okay? So protect yourselves, folks. This is no longer a game. This is reality. It is truthism. They are out to set us back 100, 200, 300 years. And don't let it happen. Stay vigilant and never say, I give. Never, ever.
Yeah. I suspect some of them would be okay with us being slaves, Val. And I'm not trying to be funny. I think, in a real sense, with inflation and prices for stuff being out of control, when the Trump administration said they were going to fix that, they didn't. When they said that they were going to end the war in Ukraine, we didn't even talk about geopolitical issues today, Val, because there was too much shit going on here at home. But anyway, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to get out of here. I want to say I appreciate again you guys taking the time to join us. Make sure you tell people about us and have them subscribe and listen. I'm back home at least for a little while. I'll be back in Tanzania in June, but I'll tell you more about that the next time we're on. So in the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody today, and I really do mean that, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.